I'd like to call to order the Broadband Committee members. Roll call, please.
Alderman Newsom.
Present.
Alderman Bolton.
Present.
Alderman Seeger.
Present.
Chair Kirkwood.
Present. I'd like to have approval of the February 21st meeting. Minutes of the February.
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Newsom. Second.
Second. Sorry, go ahead.
Second by Alderman Seeger. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any members of the audience that would like to speak on any particular topic that's on the agenda? None? We have a presentation from Dave Giordano, who is one of the members of the Broadband Committee on fixed wireless. At this time, we'd like to give your attention to the screen area, and he will go over the fixed wiring. Dave, thank you for coming.
So I'm Dave Giordano. I'm one of the board members of Connect Waukegan. Before doing this, I was about 34 years in IT consulting, lived down the road in Lake Bluff, and my wife is a 1982 grad of Waukegan East, as she's routing it over there. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is fixed wireless, and there's some terms in here that some folks know, and I want to make sure this can be question and answer. But as we look at broadband for our community, the difference between wires, so whether that's laying fiber or cable, is wires require the physical assets to put down, support at that location, but for that you get higher speed and quality. The nice part about wireless is it doesn't require laying of wires, it doesn't require the support at the location. So when folks talk about the support about somebody has to come to the house, think about when you have your cell phone, you bring your cell phone in to get worked at, that's what wireless kind of is. Cell phones are a wireless, fixed wireless approach. It is a little bit lower speed and quality, but it can be impacted by external factors. So think about when you have your cell phone, you're not getting as many bars, or there's a tree in the way, it doesn't work in your basement, those type of things. So what we wanted to look at for Connect Waukegan is fixed wireless. We saw other communities, Murray, in Utah, Milwaukee is doing it extensively for underserved areas, of this idea that from the internet, could we use radio waves and fixed wireless to deliver high-speed internet to homes, businesses, or different locations around Waukegan? And I want to make sure people understand the radio wave we're talking about is a different spectrum than that Wi-Fi that you would have at your house. So for folks that are familiar with Wi-Fi at your house, it kind of covers the house but doesn't extend to your neighbors. What we're talking about at fixed wireless is much more like, and you're going to see more like a cell phone tower that can have a range that's dependent on where you place the cell phone tower. So why a fixed wireless approach? The cost is considerably cheaper than putting in wires and fiber. The flexibility as far as to do stuff, you can get up to speed very quickly. And then the other part is we can leverage existing geographic locations that maybe have access or are geographically beneficial, like on top of a hill. I'm going to bring up how across the street is such a great location if we wanted to place something there as well, to extend current fiber and bandwidth to other areas. So to understand fixed wireless, you have to understand spectrum, and I can go through this a little bit more, but what I wanted to show was this is what a licensed spectrum is. And I tried to show AM, FM radio, television are some of those blue things in there. The cell phones have reserved spectrum. What we can take advantage of, and many communities is this newly released Citizens Broadband Radio Services, or CBRS. So what the FCC has done for the last couple of years is to say, hey, look, there's a spectrum that anybody can use in the public space. So in some way, you can become your own data provider like a cell phone network. So instead of having to rent spectrum from AT&T or T-Mobile, you can use your own. So what we wanted to do for, and you're seeing where all those are on here. I'm not going to go through what Citizens Broadband Radio Spectrum is, but you can look at the slides later on. It's something that the FCC has said, you know, it wasn't being used. The Navy was using it for location. And so as a public spectrum, they let anybody use it now, but it's a priority-based spectrum that gets managed that way. So the goals, what we did this last summer for the proof of concept was a proof of concept to confirm the cost. We had done a consulting work with CTC, as well as we had talked to the Murray schools out in Utah, and they gave some different ranges. CTC said about a half mile and 25 download, 5 megabit upload speed. Murray had a little bit longer. We wanted to confirm that, confirm security, confirm the reliability, and then just understand what it was. It's hard to pitch something for, hey, we could use this for X. We wanted to see what we could do with it. So what we did was in 2022 in May, we procured the equipment. We used a provider called from Baycells is the name of the provider that provided the antennas and the radio, as well as some of the end user devices. I brought a couple to show what those look like. We you sled mount it for the folks that are familiar on the roof. I'll show you what a picture of that looks like. And because and a great partner to work with, the Lake County Health Department, let us use the 310 Grand location as a place to put this antenna to test it within Waukegan. So what you're seeing here is on the thing, this is what it looks like. So a sled mount just sits flat on the roof with cinder blocks to hold it down. It's holding 4 antennas, one pointing north, south, east, and west, with 2 radios from Baycells down there. You're seeing there's a really small picture of me up there with the radio up on top. So basically, we put this on the right off of Grand Avenue there, and the components of it were the Baycells radio. Google provides a SaaS, which is basically the internet service, and then we're using Baycells Cloud Core to manage it. So it's very managed, very much like a cell phone provider would manage this. Some of the things, so when we talk about the customer premise equipment, and I think this is where I can kind of help understand the difference between fixed wireless and just the Wi-Fi at your house. There is an outdoor antenna. The first one I didn't bring one. That's about the size of a pizza box. The second one I did bring. So this is what goes in what we would call the customer premise equipment. So this would go, if you've ever seen something from T-Mobile or Verizon as a Wi-Fi hotspot that goes in your house. This is the same type of thing. That was our indoor router. This would not only catch the signal from our antenna on the roof, but would broadcast a Wi-Fi signal for anybody who wanted to connect on a device at home. So this is one of the devices that does that. They have a smaller device that compares to, if you've ever seen MiFi devices from cell phone providers, that this does the same thing. It's a little less powerful, but it's more battery provided, so you could carry it around and get the fixed wireless signal. And then the last thing I didn't show on here, but this is an outdoor Wi-Fi device. Any of these could be connected to this to project to a bigger Wi-Fi signal. This one I tested about 400 yards in any direction. So as we look at the opportunities of where we could leverage CBRS, thinking about outdoor spots where we could light up outdoor spots with free public Wi-Fi or offer for low-income houses with these devices as well. So we did the test. We did basically confirm some of our things. The geographic benefits of 310 Grand had great connectivity going east. Not as great going north. That's due because it's kind of up on a hill up there and projecting down. But we were able to get pretty good range from a half mile to a mile to confirm our thoughts about not only how this would work, but could we do it and install it ourselves. It took me about 2 days to put it up there on the roof. What we found with Google Network Planner as we look at different locations in Waukegan was it was very accurate. And it kind of depends on the where you place the antenna. So what you're seeing down here on the bottom of this graph is That's our location at 310 Grand. And then you're seeing it, because it comes down that hill as you go east, you're seeing why we get that mile range. What interacts, as you can see from that graph, the one on top I did for the courthouse as well, does very good if we wanted to get connectivity out to the lake, but that's because it's all flat. So any questions so far on any of this stuff? Is any of this making sense? Oh, go ahead.
So this particular black box, is that more like, functions like a hotspot?
Correct. Exactly like a hotspot, except there's no Verizon or T-Mobile or anybody else involved. It can be given out as an extension to wherever we wanted to put that antenna. Does that make sense?
So how is this saving money for, especially those of low income?
So for low-income folks, so right now, I think a good example is what the school did during the pandemic was deliver these devices from Verizon for roughly $15 a month. Okay, the part about this device is a $100 device, and that antenna is around a $25,000 setup. But that idea is if I had 100 of these, that pays for itself in what I had in less than a year. Depending on how you distribute it. The other part is as you go forward, you're not paying per month. It's much more of an investment in infrastructure than it is a cost to a provider. Any other questions?
How many of these antennas would we need to cover the whole city?
I wouldn't recommend, Thomas and I have talked about this, I wouldn't recommend covering the whole city because we're not in the business of competing against Comcast and Verizon and T-Mobile. We would like all of those providers to be very successful. I think what we would look at and what Milwaukee has done very successfully is look at areas that have low connectivity and that the providers aren't providing for or that can't afford. Specifically around, if you think about needing to have a credit card in order to purchase a Wi-Fi service, can we do something for those people with lower income that we provide free Wi-Fi as an extension? That's what Milwaukee has done for a certain number of different housing developments. Rather than saying I have to cover the whole city, you look at what we had done the proof of concept for was say spot by spot, maybe deploy it where it makes the most amount of sense, rather than saying cover the whole city.
Okay.
Oops, wrong way. So when we look at, and this is my last slide, low-income areas that are not served by wired or wireless providers, that's what Milwaukee has done. But then look at it for free public Wi-Fi in other areas, so whether that's the beach, parks, downtown, or other business districts. I saw the thing about maybe in the summer, the food trucks coming to the beach. That idea of free Wi-Fi, not just for the food trucks, but for the people that are hanging out at the beach, would be a great opportunity to, I think from talking to multiple people, it's amazing how many different people work remotely because they have free Wi-Fi access. When I was talking to one of the New York cities, they actually said this one park got very, very popular because it had free Wi-Fi. But then look at other places, can we deploy on other access points? So if we already have fiber to a location, this gives you that ability to send it to the locations around it without having to wire fiber to those places. And like I said, we can get it up in a couple of days. And then Wi-Fi, this is more just for more records. Any other questions? I think I would say, as Thomas and I said, it was great working with the Lake County. Health Department was great as far as supporting us, and they helped me carry the equipment up and down and install it and all that other good stuff.
So you were saying that this would go into some areas that are underserved, and is there, who decides what the parameters of that are? Is there a committee? Is there?
Well, what we were looking at was to really get engaged with the city to decide, you guys know your areas better than we do. We looked at putting one on top of Beacon Place just because we're involved there as well, and it has some geographic beneficial of down to Lake County, to the lakefront, to the new housing development. But we really wanted to look more and partner with the city of where should this be, because it's an extension of fiber. It's not, it's not something that we would do as a for-profit company that would decide, okay, how can we best deploy it? But then I think that's it's complicated because there's not only, hey, do we already have access to broadband there that we could leverage the antenna with? What's the geographic, Grand was a 4-story building. Across the street is a great location as a higher building to get more, because we get more coverage the higher up we are.
Right.
So go ahead.
So you'll have to forgive me. I'm not a very
No, that's fine.
techie kind of person. So how does this interact with like the 5G stuff we're already talking about doing? Because that's actual cable,
No, this
right?
would, so 5G is a protocol that would be,
Okay.
we did this with 4G and LTE, but we could do 5G as well. Just, it's using the same type of equipment that a cell phone company does.
Okay.
So, but instead of it being 5G on Verizon or T-Mobile's network, it would be your own 5G.
Right, but weren't we already laying cable of some sort? Like,
We do have a mix of existing fiber, as well as we've obviously been exploring discussions related to cost of laying fiber. Obviously, digging has its challenges, right-of-way approvals, permissions, crossing IDOT or crossing railroad tracks.
this seems so much easier.
There are certainly pros and cons, and I want to
And I think, and this is what people refer to it as the last mile connectivity. So the idea is, instead of having to run wires to every house, hey, I run it to one house and then I can project it to the folks in the neighborhood, or I run it to one location and I can project it to folks in the neighborhood. So,
Got it.
I think a robust mix is what we're seeing from different people. Like I said, Milwaukee didn't cover the whole city with it. They just said, hey, this area it makes sense, and this area it makes sense. And as we look at infrastructure improvements, the nice part that I mentioned was, once you buy it and you have the connectivity, it's not an ongoing monthly cost. It's more of it's an infrastructure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Question?
Alderman.
Would we be required to lease space on top of private buildings to place those antennas, or would they be in public?
Yeah, it's either or, right? So it's if you have so like 310, the 310 Grand, they were fine with, hey, it's a county building, you can put it up there. If it's a private building, you either have to lease the space or work a deal where, we'll give you free broadband if you give us the space on, that. I think the other one is cell phone towers themselves, where you would lease space as well, or water tower. I heard the water tower mentioned before. I've seen them up on water towers as well. But the coming up with where you want to place it also is, do I have existing fiber going there, because it does need the connection to the internet.
I have one more question.
Sure.
So in terms of the physical equipment that you demonstrated here that you brought with you in the
Right.
I would imagine that there has to be a system in place to inventory that equipment and store it if it's not being used, or repair it if it's broken by either a user or something happens to it. Do we have an idea of the cost of annual maintenance and replacement of broken instruments?
So the antenna itself setup, I put it back up there. Like I said, around $20,000 for that piece. We estimated a 5-year, and had that confirmed by multiple people, that it's about a 5-year lifespan for the antenna itself up on top. As far as the devices, the individual devices, this is a $100 device. It's not a repairable device. It's a throwaway device, right? This one's a $400 device. Maybe repairable, maybe throwaway, depending on how it is. But I think the biggest thing is, though, when it comes to the repair, as we mentioned, some of the complaints about the wired services of Comcast or somebody else, they have to come to your house to figure out what the infrastructure is. You bring these in. What the school was doing was, if someone was struggling with a MiFi, they would send them back with it, hey, bring yours in, I'll give you another one to go home with. Because I can test and verify that it works in one location, like a Genius Bar, rather than having to come to your location to configure it. Make sense? Any other questions? All right, Thomas, thanks so much. Oh, go ahead.
So if I have existing Wi-Fi already, how would you convince me to invest and take this option Is it
So who do
because
you
of
have?
costs or
It depends on
lower
who you have.
speed or what?
It depends on who you have Wi-Fi from, right? So it's obviously a cost. You know, this is a infrastructure investment versus a monthly cost. So if you have Wi-Fi from one of the traditional vendors, as we look at, you know, that's $60 a month or $30 a month, what we can say is if that is cost prohibitive for low income, then can we come up with a way where we can deliver this as part of the infrastructure of Waukegan, rather than them not getting the service because they don't want to pay the $30 to $60 a month?
You did mention it's lower in speed though, right?
So this would be consistent. It depends on how close they are to the antenna and where we position them. So it's very much, you know, I give the analogy of the cell phone. When you have one bar, you don't get as much data as when you have 4 bars. It's the exact same technology. So it depends on where we place the antennas. And like the question came up before, 5G is going to be coming out with these, so we would expect the speeds to improve. Go ahead, question.
So if someone already has Wi-Fi in their house and somebody opts to have you guys services, would that affect someone else's Wi-Fi?
No. So it just like the Wi-Fi is just like when you look up Wi-Fi from your device and you see everybody's house around you, it's using the same protocols to share that Wi-Fi spectrum. So whenever, you know, if you look up, I want to connect to O'Hare Airport, and you see 5 different, you know, Wi-Fi, and you decide which one, that's a shared spectrum as well. So it would not affect or conflict with the other Wi-Fi.
I think it's pretty neat to give that to the underprivileged communities. I think the only thing that will be scary is the cost of the devices. If something was to happen, in most underprivileged communities, they have kids.
Right. Well, and I would say that, you know, this is the same device that the schools used during the pandemic for the kids to have connectivity during the pandemic.
The Chromebook?
The Chromebook with a MiFi device from T-Mobile, exactly like this. And the kids did really well with it, at least from Josue, who's on our committee, had given us. So it's, you know, this is definitely a more kind of solid, it has bars just like everything else. This one's a little bit more, but like I said, it powers more of the house than just the one device.
And one last question, how do you, what's the safety measure from it being hacked? So if I have it, can other people around me pick up off my Wi-Fi?
So this one is just like a router that you set up with a password on it.
Okay, so they
So
have
as long as whoever we give the user to protects that password, when we talked about some of the public Wi-Fi spaces, we had talked about leveraging the libraries, public Wi-Fi, or extending. So those same security protocols come into play. And definitely that was when we were talking about maybe with the schools or other stuff too. We wanted to make sure it was safe.
Any additional questions from the alderpersons or our community people?
Alderman. I just want to take a moment to thank Dave. Dave has done a tremendous amount of work with our Connect Waukegan in pursuing this project, published a white paper on behalf of our Waukegan community, and really has done a lot of research on behalf of our task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Seeing that there's no old business, no new business, we will be giving out additional information regarding where we are with broadband and how we can service the community. Certainly, there's things that we can do. There are certainly some grants and things that are in the process that we're working on, so we'll get that information to the general public. At this time, I'd like to make a motion for adjournment.
So move.
A second.
Moved by Alderwoman Newsom, second by Alderwoman Bolton. All in favor?